companion software would be if you go into connection instances, you could just run it locally and then switch it over to the secondary machine IP once it fails. So it's a manual process, but I have typically found my issues come before my show starts, right? When I'm having troubles, in which case you could just point it, have it all set up, test it out beforehand, but just swap the IP out to where you're talking to the second machine. As long as your network's up, you'll be okay.
For I'm trying to see if we had one watching on Facebook. I just realized the audio wasn't going out to the stream, so I apologize for turning away from the camera and all. David,
those were brilliant answers. Thank you so much. Sorry, Facebook.
yeah. Thanks, Bill, for letting them know what they missed. That's the one you can't even rewind on. Seriously, though, if you heard you wouldn't have even heard the question, quite honestly. So a quick review. What we reviewed is David asked to have two separate machines, two separate instances of ZoomOSC, kind of OSC A, OSC B for backup purposes, and to be able to cover. And so, do they need to fire together, the same thing, or sit standby and be a hot ready?
Yeah, I think part of it is my own workflow with rolling video, and we'll roll video against. So we'll do a video roll and a beat later roll the same video against it in case one fails. You can kind of cut to the other. So I just got to get my mind set out of that workflow. But just have
No, that's even an added thought that it's not my workflow, but makes perfect sense to have to go down that thought process. Anybody else? Colin, John? Yeah, go ahead.
Quick additional thought on that. Not a very developed thought, but it is possible if you did have a scenario where you needed to have those synchronous backup queues. I wonder if using a intermediate program as sort of an OSC router might be the solution. It would require something custom, but imagine an intermediate program that would be receiving the OSC from both sources and then outputting it locally on the same machine to the ZoomOSC instance. And so it would be able to rather than simultaneously send both streams of OSC to the OSC, ZoomOSC instance, it would be able to take the primary and then detect if the primary is not coming through and then send the backup. Obviously more complicated, but an interesting thought.
Yeah.
I planted a seed.
Sounds like a kind of a little bit of the logic of a load balancer, right?
Right.
Is if the path is alive or not, and so forth. So, yeah, Bill.
So I have total newbie questions for ZoomOSC. So I'm running in a Windows environment. I'm using ZoomOSC Pro. And my first question is, should I be logging in as join only or log in as my username? It's such a basic question, but I don't know. I don't know what the pros and cons are.
Yeah, I don't know that there's a positive or negative effect to ZoomOSC at the end of the day, unless Jonathan has more to add to that. But if the meeting requires you to be authenticated, then you'll have to log in with an account prior to being able to be let into the meeting. If the meeting originator does not check the box to require authentication, which is to be logged into to Zoom the organization first, your Zoom account, then you can just kind of hit the meeting directly on a join only. But I think functionally, Jonathan, correct me if I'm wrong, functionally the experience will be the same as long as you're given co-host. You can be given co-host coming in either way.
What I did notice is then I get two instances when I log in with email only. So I'm logged in as myself, one instance, and then on another monitor, it's popping up the ZoomOSC instance. And it took me a while to realize that when I was pinning and things that it was happening to the ZoomOSC instance, and I didn't necessarily see it on where I was logged in.
Am I understanding that? Almost to me, I almost heard and visualized that is that the vanilla Zoom client and the ZoomOSC client? Is that
correct?
What
I had them both when I yeah, when I log in with just email, it's actually opening up. I've logged in already to start the meeting. So I'm in a test mode. So this isn't real world. So I'm logging in to start the meeting. Then I have ZoomOSC just log in with the meeting ID, not as a user. And I end up with
So
two
so you're
instances.
hosting, you're being the host.
Yes,
All right. So you just haven't you haven't separated machines, which is,
correct.
I would say, a best practice. It's all that Andy's ever given me as a best practice is to run OSC on a separate machine. Or you haven't been one of the brave ones, and I don't say that facetiously. The brave ones. There's no reason in the world you, as the host, can't host with ZoomOSC client. Really. I mean, it's there are certain little nuances that might feel a little different because the SDK is, a slightly different version, right? But it's fairly minimum at the end of the day. So you can literally start and host the meeting with just the OSC client. Therefore, you'd have one instance and you'd have all the power of OSC at your hands as well. I just follow that one more time with best practices would be host on your vanilla Zoom client, and then on a separate machine, have your OSC client.
And that makes sense. It's in my testing environment. I was trying to simplify my setup.
I think in testing environment, I would go simplify unless part of your test is to have both clients, but if that's not part of your test requirements, then I would just fire up a host, on the ZoomOSC client itself. That would simplify. It'd certainly clean up your screens,
Right.
Of all the different windows. They're hard to keep. ZoomOSC windows are challenging for me to manage, especially when you add ZoomISO to the mix as well. And so, yeah, Cone.
Enlighten me, Jeff. What is a vanilla Zoom client? What is that? That vanilla part?
The vanilla part is the one that comes from Zoom. Go to Zoom/downloads. It's their publicly released client. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
OEM is the other.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, okay.
A lot of folks when they start hearing about and investigating ZoomOSC, it takes a while before we get to the point we go, yeah, that's a Zoom client. That's exactly what it is. It's a Zoom client that just has added code via the SDK that gives us a lot of ability, but it truly is a replacement. It's just it's always a notch behind the vanilla Zoom client from Zoom. They always get everything first, and then they update the SDK afterwards, and so there is always that little gap.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So my next question is, what's the difference between a target index and a list index?
All right, I'm going to stop talking. Not my strength.
Yeah, I would encourage you to read through the manual for some more specific detail. But the list indexes are based on the position in the gallery that you see the users in the Zoom meeting, whereas the target index is based on a text file that you could load into ZoomOSC with written usernames that it follows. And this isn't as using the targets isn't as necessary unless you have a very specific need for it. We found that, and the reason it was originally there was for theater shows where you had a set number of actors that have standard names that would do rehearsals every evening, and you want to be able to just load up a file that would automatically pair them and find the right usernames based on that. So it isn't as necessary these days, but if you want to know more details, I would encourage reading through the manual, and that'll give you like the exact formats and the justifications for why it is the way it is.
Yeah.
So is there a manual in addition to, I've got the API doc, but is there another manual?
We've got 3 documents, and I should be able to link all 3 in just a moment. We've got a quick start guide, we've got the API reference, and then we've got a user manual. And they all have very similar information, but I can give you all 3.
That could be part of my struggles. Is I'm just going by the API, and I was testing everything, and then I also on Windows, my understanding is the gallery index isn't accurate. Is that true?
That is true. I can't remember off the top of my head if we've solved some of that, resolved some of that for the new O5 release, but that is true. We do recommend, and the way to put it is that it is often accurate, usually accurate, but because there's a few things that can happen to a Zoom meeting that would throw off the count, we sort of can't trust it enough. And so we do recommend that while you can try it, and for some applications it may work, if you're doing something that involves tracking the gallery in a specific way, we highly recommend using a Mac to do it.
Yeah, I haven't had great success, but I haven't tested the, the 405, pre-release either. But on Windows for gallery tracking, I remember one of the outcomes was the names. Let's say I was looking for, using dynamic variables on my Stream Deck. The names that I would get from the Windows gallery would be the individuals with their cameras on, but not the ones with their cameras not on. But if that was like position 0 was off and position 1 was on, that would be the first name I would receive, but I would receive it in position 0. And so it wasn't necessarily like indexed aligned, but I've got to add that was fairly early on, and so if Zoom has enabled Liminal to have more and better access to tracking that may have improved, but I haven't seen it or felt it quite yet.
Well, this is just maybe a higher level question then. Is the expectation that the capabilities on the Windows side eventually are going to match what's on the Mac side, or is there going to be some functional platform differences that are going to persist?
Yeah, so the best answer I can give is that it is our intent to have both versions match as closely as possible. And Andy's mentioned this in previous meetings and in demonstrations, but unfortunately, Zoom has coded both SDKs on Mac and Windows in completely separate languages, and that means that we have to maintain different code bases for both applications. And the problem is that Zoom hasn't even made sure that the same functions are working on both platforms. So it makes it a little difficult for us because while we want to say yes, it's our priority to make sure we have the same functionality on both platforms, every now and then we come into a hiccup of something that works on Mac but not on Windows, or vice versa. So that's kind of the best answer I can give you. It is definitely our goal to always make the applications function as close to each other as possible. And we are trying to move in that direction, even so far as the interfaces, making the interfaces more similar, making the as much as we can. We will make sure that the OSC commands will always be the same between platforms. That is something that we keep consistent to make sure that you can seamlessly transfer between the computers.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Mm-hmm.
Question on the subject of interface within the client. Are the configuration options for UI and control sticky? I've noticed, like, I'll toggle certain features on or off, exit out of the program, come back in, and it doesn't retain those settings. And I haven't got my head around, am I authenticated in with my account, or is it just in the standalone mode? But and also, I guess, some of the nomenclature or functions of those things, because you guys go down into the nitty gritty as far as what you can turn on or turn off. I'm just trying to get my head around what they all do.
And are you referring to the settings inside of Zoom or the settings inside of ZoomOSC's sidecar application?
Within Zoom, but when you hit the configure button on the dashboard, the big blue dashboard button,
right?
And
okay.
You go through the list of things. You have like UI custom, and there's like 2 other tiers of toggles. You have meeting window share, join meeting invite, and others with a slew of hide or not hide things. And the feature custom. I've noticed, like sometimes I'll go through the UI custom and hide the toolbar, show this one, hide that one. But if I come back in on another session, they don't retain that thing.
Right. Yeah, I'll look into that a bit more. I don't know the right answer for that. It could be that some things retain and some things don't. But yeah, I'll check that.
Cool. Not a slag, just a question.
Okay. I'm just mussing fussing with I'm applying an update to my ZoomISO. All right.
Just went ahead and posted in chat the links to the user manual, quick start guide, and API, and just some shortened links we can use.
Deal. Have any of you, David? Are you? It sounds like you are. Are you still just mentally conceptualizing, or do you have your
No,
hands on now, or where are you now? Sounds like you're making progress.
Making progress, yeah. Kind of rebuilt my whole companion environment and re-upped on another trial license for a couple of weeks, and I'm really trying to get it into a place where I can bring it into an event. Not a high visibility event for right now, but just as proof of concept to show the crew what we can be doing.
Where do you have a pretty decent idea of what kind of challenges that it will be able to provide for you guys? Or you're hoping that it will?
Yeah, I think just the quicker manipulation of things. We are looking to up the game as far as production and what we're putting out to our destination. Right now, we're kind of just producing everything within Zoom. So it's just spotlight on spotlight, spotlight on spotlight. Looking to separate that out, bring it into a production graphics thing, i.e. vMix or something, or, just trying to up the game like everybody else is.
Mm-hmm.
But I think part of the challenge too is just the visibility that our events happen in, because we're busy all the time and it's very little time for research and dev, and that's kind of what I'm trying to up on.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's time, and that's why I know my own approach has been slow and steady. In the sense of feeling incredibly accomplished just because I'm spotlighting with a button. It's like it just seems so menial, but the fact is, if you run enough shows or meetings, mouse clicking your spotlights, it's a pretty big step. I mean, it seems fairly insignificant, but it's a really big step to be able to toggle on, toggle off, or multi-spotlight in one button push, and so forth, and to even clear them all in one push, versus the comparative mouse. I mean, you can outrun anybody sitting next to you running a Zoom meeting with a mouse and with the requirement of multi-spotlighting. There's no question. And then the very next step is, and for me, it's like, oh, why didn't I just do this? And that is, for every spotlight, the very next action you add is unmute, and for every unspotlight you add mute, and so they come on ready to talk, they go back and they're quiet, and just that, bring them on, bring them off with audio and video and so forth, and so it really just becomes a lifesaver. Then then I grew it into one button multi spotlights that where I called them. I actually even built it on my Stream Deck as scene 1, scene 2, scene 3, and I knew who who needed to be there at that point in time. And so scene 2, just kind of, if you'll think about it, whether it worked out that way or not, it often did, is kind of wipe the screen, multi spotlight, bing bing bing, and it just becomes life-saving stuff. And then what I don't love you know, I don't love having to, you know, do it. But like when I invest the time to build out my Stream Deck, I want to be able to use it. But you know, like anything, things can go wrong. And I had a Mac that used to give me companion problems all the time, and it would crap the bed partway through a show 2 times in a row. And so, but the benefit of it was next to nobody knew it except me, and that is because your instant backup is, you know, it's not going to come up to the camera, but your mouse. You know, I mean, you know, if you began proficiently managing, you know, Zoom meetings and spotlighting and so forth with a mouse, you don't have to really do anything extra there. Now, if you don't want that to be your backup, then you start entertaining the design that you talked about earlier, David, and having redundant systems that are, you know, on standby, ready to go, or doing things simultaneously if appropriate. So it's pretty cool the way it does it. I mean, ZoomOSC, you know, at its foundation, anyways, where I think most people's entry points. Is not doing anything that Zoom can't do, right? And I mean, it certainly goes beyond that, but at the foundational pieces, you can do it. I just say, welcome to the world of smooth and quick and reliable, or clunky. It's clunky to have to, you know, click the spotlight, click to unmute, you know, and all that. And so it's, you know, maybe it's not your ideal backup, but at least the show can go on, depending on the kind of show. You know, if it's fast moving theater, you might be screwed. You know, that's where you kind of have to have an A system, B system ready to go. But you know, you have to plan accordingly and appropriately. I will say that YouTube stream looks amazing. I'm looking at it on an old iMac back here, and it looks incredible. The clarity and all, it beats my brand new laptop that is actually providing the stream image. But by the time it gets out there to YouTube from vMix, sending out 6 megabits at 1080, and it's pretty crystal clear. I'm glad we're doing that. All right. Again, you know, I mean, all we have right now is, you know, a Zoom meeting going on, and you know, the ability, if I wouldn't spotlight me, let me take me out of that mix right now and make that somebody else. Let me make it Cone instead. Now it won't have that infinite video loop, but you know, even solving that that problem of, you know, kind of a quick 2-up is you know, in vMix, I have four inputs always waiting for a feed from my ZoomISO instance on this Mac. I don't have to do it every time. I don't have to refresh it. I don't have to rebuild those inputs. I can shut everything down, reboot, which I have, and it's still, if it's there, it comes right in, always. And so it's been super dependable that way. And so I have a 2-up input, and I have 4 potential NDI inputs. And if I'm over here on ZoomISO and I have 2 to 4 outputs, NDI outputs, they're 1080 outputs on a single Mac, that could just, I mean, as far as ZoomISO is concerned, it's only using the Mac's built-in screen. It is admittedly connected to an external monitor, but it's 100% reliant on the what they refer to as color LCD, which is the Mac screen. And so, you know, 4 1080 outputs, which I haven't even pushed it past that, but super clean outputs out of that. And so if I wanted to change, if I wanted to now switch this 2-up from Jonathan and Cone to David and Jonathan, I just literally on ZoomISO, I just changed the output to David. I didn't do anything in vMix, which has traditionally been my mixer, right, my switcher, and I just say, hey, this output is this person, this output is this person, and just change it on the fly. Now, I did it with a mouse, and the fact is I don't know, Jonathan, can you demo that for us on a Stream Deck button, or at least the command, OSC command that is available to change those outputs?
So I can't demo it right now, but what I can say is that we've got some tutorial videos coming on the way. We're posting a couple of them each day, and we do have one that specifically highlights how to use a Stream Deck to control the routing. And there's some really cool things you can do with that.
Yeah. So imagine having, a page of names of people, or at least your essential people, and when you press it, what all it's doing is saying, hey, you go to, and you could actually do a select. If you say you had 4 outputs from ZoomISO, and so you have a grid of buttons of people, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 buttons over here. That's output 1, output 2, output 3, output 4, which is the ZoomISO designation. And so you say, you, output 3, you, output 1. And you could just switch like that during the entire meeting and never have to touch your vision mixer at all to make any changes there. I think it's fascinating. One, it's simply, a different way of doing things, but I love components. I like to be able to have it broken down in pieces if and when I need to delegate responsibilities to others, right? And it really gives you that flexibility to do just that. So good stuff. Somebody, was it David? No, Bill, I think, had your hand up a second ago. Somebody did.
I did if I unmute myself. And I threw it in the chat. It's the same question as if you're routing it out of Zoom through vMix and doing the layered view back in, the multi-view, don't you have an audio sync issue? Won't you have video being processed and then it is not going to match the audio that's in the Zoom meeting?
Yeah. This is like half of the approach right now.
So more of a contribution, we'd push it out to another Zoom meeting, so it's a non-issue.
You can. You would take ideally designed. You would take have all your speakers come into a meeting of their own, and you could take you could build the protocol that says, hey, can't talk unless your speaker, or that's just a green room, and then you go to you get moved to a breakout room when it's your turn to actually be a speaker or something thereabouts, right? Because you could take right now you have to take the muxed audio out of that Zoom meeting and bring it in a muxed manner, not an ISO'd manner, to bring it in with the speakers, and then feed both of those sources into the actual, say, general session, and that would keep it in sync, or at least give you two different paths to get in sync as well. But yeah, if I threw that back up and then change this one to Bill. Now go ahead and talk.
So this is Bill, and I'm just talking now, and let's see if there's lip sync. It probably is missing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, I think part of the issue we're seeing too is because we're hearing Bill from Bill.
You're hearing him watching in the meeting.
Bill from Jeff.
And If I were able to take Bill and his audio, or even the muxed audio from a different meeting, bring it in and pump it into this meeting, it would be no issue, and you'd never even know. But yeah, the time it takes to process that, NDI out into vMix, out of vMix, back out to my virtual camera into Zoom, then the video is I would call it significantly delayed to the audio at that point, because Zoom does a great job of real low latency experience, and we're hearing you live, if you will, versus processed after the fact.
So Jonathan, my understanding is, as it becomes available, you're going to be able to do ISO audio feeds too, with ZoomISO?
Yes, that's definitely a priority of us, and it will likely come in stages. Because of some architectural issues with the SDK that we're trying to work around, we have a possibility of how we can get that isolated audio. What we'll likely do is we'll start with muxed audio, but we will embed that muxed audio in the NDI just so that it makes it a little easier to get from system to system. Then we have a few methods that we're trying out of how to get as close as we can to ISO audio. It's possible we won't be able to get all the way there, but we'll be able to have audio that is being sent down the right channels, one multi-channel, one per each participant, but it can't handle maybe more than 3 at once, or there are certain limitations based on how many audio feeds are actually being sent to your system in a regular Zoom client. And we're going to try to hit that limit and give you the best results we can. We do have down the pipeline, we are exploring some options that would allow us to sort of completely overhaul the back end of ZoomISO and get us true ISO audio and some improved video quality as well. So that may come maybe a month or two from now or later, but the hope is that as soon as capabilities for audio become possible, we're going to try to implement them in a staged approach.
So I just heard a month or two from now, which to me is incredibly quick. So
hopefully,
okay.
There's a few things on the back end we're waiting for. We're waiting for some development switches from Zoom. We're waiting for some research to get back to us on what's possible, what's not. So, maybe a month might be a bit optimistic. So maybe 2 or 3 months is a little more realistic on that. But
it's going to take me that long to set up my simple Stream Deck buttons.
Yeah.
A follow-on question: do you think that will come to Mac first or Windows first?
For the audio?
I'm going to guess Mac only because ZoomISO is only Mac right now as well. You know what I'm saying? So
right.
It as far as the ISO audio, but
yeah, that's correct. So it would come to the Mac first. In terms of the Windows version of ZoomISO, we are exploring that right now, and we've obviously known from the start that there's significant interest to be able to have this be a cross-platform application. Like I said before, though, even more so than with ZoomOSC, ZoomISO relies on some Mac SDK specific parts of the Zoom SDK. So we have to sort of approach this from a different angle on the back end for the Windows port. But it is something we're planning on doing, and with luck, we'll be able to several months from now have 2 versions that are both compatible, that both have the same functions and interface, and that hopefully will both have some form of audio built into it.
So this is kind of the use case. If that capability is there, is I do an all hands meeting, like an internal corporate meeting, run on Zoom. It's a Zoom webinar. I'd have my panelists come in. I'd pull them as ZoomISO feeds from 1 or 2 machines coming via NDI into my vMix, do my look and all my switching within vMix. It's pushing back out to a spotlighted Zoom view. We do the show, we get to the Q&A, and at the Q&A, they'll be in the same session, be able to see all the Zoom chat, Zoom Q&A. So from a presenter perspective, it's seamless. And yet during the show part, I've done a nice high quality presentation. If they need it, streamed out, you don't use the Zoom streaming, we'll use the vMix, RTMP out. Is that sound possible? Because what I'd be doing is with the ISO, I'd be bringing the audio in, muting everyone. Although that doesn't work, does it? Because as soon as I mute my speakers, I'm muting their ZoomISO audio.
That is correct. You'd have to leave unmuted the person who's speaking, and you'd have to manage that manually, or you would have to use.
But then their audio would be coming straight to the audience. So that the whole workflow was a dream that doesn't work. You follow the issue, right? Because the ISO feed would come in, that'd give me what I want, but as soon as I mute them so that everyone in the Zoom meeting or Zoom webinar doesn't hear direct audio from them, then I'm back to the sync issue.
You're keeping it from the audience, but you're also keeping it from yourself.
Yeah.
You're trying to pull the same
What I would
source.
suggest, though, you could get creative with breakout rooms, or a better option would be a second meeting. I know this isn't always possible in different configurations, but we found most success with having the sort of talent meeting and then have the audience meeting, and being able to pipe them from the talent meeting into the audience meeting with the sort of vMix in between. That is a very effective workflow, and you don't have sort of bleed over between the two. That also allows you to even have sort of a talk back or some communication specifically to the talent, even while the broadcast is going on or while the meeting is going on. So that is the best way to do it, but I understand there's certainly reasons why you may need it to be in one meeting.
Yeah, I mean, that workflow is the direction I'm going.
Right.
It's just you have some friction getting, the participant, not the participants, but the panelists to give up seeing the chat and seeing the questions, and you're adding a person then to move it over.
Right.
I haven't found an elegant way other than human intervention to get the questions visible for the panelists.
And right, and what we generally break it down is that if you're trying to control things that take place within a meeting, ZoomOSC is generally a solution. You can do you could have a sort of equivalent of SuperSource or so by having the multi-pin and have that automatically pin these 3 people, then take them down and pin these 2 people. So you can get some good results from that. You could also build it out more complex and have sort of a graphic overlay box as an additional dummy participant that you're automatically sending questions and things to, so that appears as a graphic on screen as part of the multi-pin. But there's that approach. ZoomISO is really only going to be very necessary for you if you are somehow leaving the meeting, if you are broadcasting to a different destination, or if you're going from one meeting into another. But it sort of requires that the content has to be leaving the meeting, purely because there is that latency, and no matter what you do, you're going to be adding some latency, and there's going to be an audio issue with that. Unless you get creative with like a breakout room and have the talent sent to a breakout room and then route the breakout room back into the main room or something, but that could be a little challenging as well.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And if we don't have another immediate question, I can share something real quick. Jeff, if I have the ability to screen share.
Oh, I'm probably. Did I not? Let me just promote you. There we go.
All right. One moment. So nothing fancy here. Let me do that. I just want to share a few links. So yeah, we do have some tutorials. We just posted 3 of them, and we have more on the way for ZoomISO. The ones that are out right now, we've got a getting started video, which will just go through what the application is like, how to join a meeting, how to create outputs. We designed it to be the one video to watch that gives you a pretty comprehensive overview of how to get started with ZoomISO on a Mac. And then we have another video, which we posted before, which is sort of a launch video, and it describes the overall capabilities of ZoomISO. And we're going to be continuing to update these as we get more information and new updates about the program. And then we also have 2 videos on using NDI and using Siphon, which are 2 of the common protocols to output. Here's a list of all the tutorials that we have on the way. These are all on my editing timeline as we speak and about to be uploaded. But we've got the getting started videos. We have some common programs that are used with ZoomISO, from QLab, Wirecast, vMix, QLab, Isadora, and so on. So that's going to give you just some specific knowledge about those applications. And if there's any applications you guys use that aren't on this list, maybe a TriCaster or something like that, would love to explore that option and add that to the list. Gallery outputs. So these are the outputs that are cropped from your gallery view, which is extremely resource efficient for the computer. We have a video on that. We have another video on how do you get your screen shares and your active speaker and your gallery out through NDI using ZoomISO. And we also have a video talking about some of the ATEM or SDI outputs, which is really exciting. Using Companion for routing control, and then designing a system for ZoomISO, which is sort of just an overall approach of like what considerations do you need to take into account about system performance and about sort of the overall structure of designing a contribution system, whether it's small or whether it's massive. And then wanted to showcase this real quick. So this is why Andy's not here. He's actually in California right now, and he's setting up this system with Alex Lindsay from Office Hours. I won't go too much in depth. In fact, this is the only image I have right now, so this isn't a very good demonstration, but this is the kind of scalable system that you can create with ZoomISO. So this is 5 Mac Minis. These are M1 Mac Minis using 5 Sonatec Echo S, I think an Echo S, I have it listed here, Echo Express SE1. So these are Thunderbolt enclosures, single cable Thunderbolt to the computer, and then inside each one of them is a Blackmagic DeckLink Duo 2 card. Those give you those SDI outputs. And what this is enabling is it's enabling a total of 20 individual HD outputs coming out of a single Zoom meeting using those 5 ZoomISO instances. Now those, if you want to sort of trace the path, those go into the 40x40 Smart Video Hub. From that router, they can then go into the multi-view, so to generate a full multi-view of all 16 participants that can then be sent back, or I guess it can generate more than that, and that can be then sent back to the participants. And then there's also a constellation in there for the actual vision mixing. Now, this won't really be demonstrated here, but there is actually an Isadora patch, sort of interface controller that is able to control all the different instances that you see here, and is able to use ZoomOSC and it's some real-time feedback from that in order to dynamically drive who is mapped and how they're appearing, and even switch between sort of super sources as needed. So a lot of power, a lot of capability in here, but it's cool to see. This is one of the best examples of how, previously, instead of ZoomISO, you've got a row of laptops, a row of computers that are handling all these. You have to pin people, one on each laptop. This is the future. This is eliminating that clutter. This is making it compact. It's making it efficient. And this is using, to spoof the monitors, it's using as well 4K dummy HDMI dongles that will trick the Macs into having a monitor, and it all can be controlled remotely as well. So a lot of cool options here. And again, I think it's neat. Each one of these computers is handling 4 HD outputs. It is theoretically possible that in some circumstances you can get up to 5 HD outputs, and you can get significantly more if you drop the resolution. However, for this system, in order to be sort of reliable and simplistic, we've chosen 4 outputs for each one of the Mac Minis. But yeah, this is great. To me, this is one of the best scalable systems, and it's very effective at what it does. And it's a great way to transition. It's one of the best ways to transition from your Zoom ecosystem going into hardware. In this case, a lot of Blackmagic hardware. So yeah, that's a cool system to share. That's really all I have on that. But we'll certainly share more details about this, maybe a video or so, as we explore more about this concept, this deployment, and discuss more about what it's enabled us to do.
Very cool. Thanks for sharing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the hardware. I mean, we think we often, limit to ZoomISO to NDI, and there's a lot of theater and hardware that's going to be able to take advantage of these siphon outputs as well to hardware. And I mean, anybody who knows Alex Lindsay knows that he's a hardware guy. He's and cables and things that are highly reliable and proven and so forth. So it supports that also. So yeah, Bill.
So I was lucky to be in the office hours, after hours, where Andy spent a little bit of time going through his setup. And he had to catch an airplane, so I didn't get to ask him a bunch of detailed questions. So I'm going to throw it out, Jonathan. If you don't know the answer, I totally get it. We'll figure it out. But would you run Isadora on the same machine that you're polling for, ZoomISO feeds, or should it be separated?
Yeah, it's a good question. And it definitely depends on what you're prioritizing. If absolute stability is your priority, naturally running it separately would make sense. But I would feel very confident running it on the same computer. We found that, and I'll wait for Andy to sort of give his full performance review of these M1s and how they interact. But we found them to be generally very, very capable of much more than what ZoomISO is requiring. So there should be enough processor overhead and enough system resources to be able to seamlessly run it on the same computer. Now, you wouldn't necessarily need to run it on every single one of the ingest computers, but it is doable.
Then a follow-on question is, he mentioned that on the M1 chip, the NDI, 4.5 is not good. 5 apparently solves the issue.
Apparently.
And I'm just curious if it really does, if we know
Right.
it does, and when you guys think you'll be able to support 5.
Yeah, so it's next on the roadmap for us. We have a new ZoomISO beta build, and we're sort of adding features to it. I do not believe we've yet added NDI5, but I can talk a bit about some of the other features. We did have the option to remove usernames now from the output feeds, which is great. And then there's some more stability we're adding, and just some minor improvements here and there to the interface. Now, NDI5 certainly is supposed to be a fairly drop-in replacement from a development standpoint. So we're going to try to have that in the next release, which will be maybe a couple weeks from now, maybe 1 or 2 weeks. We'll try to get that new version out.
Okay.
But yeah, we don't yet know whether it solves the problems. We suspect it does, and one of the big selling points of NDI5 is that it's supposed to be much better on Mac hardware, on M1 hardware. But we don't really know yet until we see it. But it should work much better.
You're going to force me into getting a Mac Mini.
Right.
Yeah. Hey, the thing is that, if it took a lawnmower to do the job, we'd go buy a lawnmower, right? And it's just, there's some hardcore, history, beliefs, and so forth between, like a Windows platform and a Mac platform. But the fact is, if it was a mouse or a keyboard or a different device versus just a different platform, which has a bit of religion to it, we'd go buy it. And quite honestly, I mean, I've been on this PC that I built last year for, it's my vMix PC. It hosts all my Zoom meetings, but I've got next to me a small little Lenovo PC. I've got in front of it my Mac. It's a 2015 MacBook Pro running ZoomISO and ZoomOSC, and then I've got a new Windows laptop and then an old iMac that I upgraded the drive and the memory in it, and it does okay. I don't do anything development. It's more my monitoring system, but yeah, it's just it's a mix of hardware. Even the OSs have to mix sometimes. Fact is they didn't used to years and years ago. I remember Macs and PCs didn't play together well at all. I mean, Macs didn't even really know what TCP/IP was as far as IP networking, and when they really standardized and adopted, TCP/IP versus their AppleTalk, which was the chattiest freaking protocol in the world, it made things it made things really easy, but it was super, super chatty and kind of unacceptable. So they kind of cleaned that up and took it away to a great degree and adopted TCP/IP. Then all of a sudden the two operating systems coexist really, really well. Not as far as like third-party development tools when it comes to coding, but as far as contributing systems to one another. I did really quickly want to just share my my Mac and Jonathan. It's not showing that screen, is it? That's no good. Let me pull this window down to my primary display and see if that gets better. Huh. That's wild. It's not showing any of my overlying windows on either one of my displays. Okay, well, maybe not. I wanted to show it's just a checkbox. It's the ZoomISO screen, but on the Outputs tab on the bottom left corner, there's a new checkbox that says Show Usernames on Outputs. and it's as simple as just unchecking that box, and the names no longer get outputted with the NDI feeds and or siphon feeds for that. So that I don't know. I pat these guys on the back all the time of, you know, the clean, easy implementation of, you know, some of the stuff is a given because they understand our industry well, you know, and our requirements and demands, and some of the natural things just show up the way we'd like them, and then and the things that you know, they recognize we need a choice, then that ends up working really well and smooth and easy as well. So, anyways. I gotta figure out the sharing issue. I'll try to do that. Jeremy wrote in the chat that he came in with a trial version of ZoomISO and was hoping to be able to test it. So, Jeremy, is that all on your one Zoom login? If I make you a co-host to give you some. Well, you don't really need co-host for ZoomISO, by the way. You need co-host for ZoomOSC to be able to kind of execute spotlights and things like that. So what is it that you want to do?
I just wanted to make sure that you were okay if I came in with another instance. It's
oh, dude, that's what. Oh, yeah, that's what this truly.
I didn't want to show up.
My dream and wish is everybody who shows up in twos in the ZoomOSC Test Kitchen. You know, and so yeah, feel free. Go ahead and get that other system logged in, and anybody who's at that point and ready to do that, go ahead and do it, and. Just name it so it's easy for me to recognize. Like mine came, well, I applied an upgrade and then relogged in, and I forgot to rename myself. I was originally coming in as Jeff OSC. Now it's host. But anyways, yeah, just name it so we can recognize it and give it the right privileges. If like I said, ISO doesn't need to be co-host; it just pulls the video. But if you want to, you know, spotlight and do those things, then I'll happy to give you co-host so that the ZoomOSC machine can do that as well.
I'll do that next time, hopefully. How's my audio level here?
Yeah, just maybe if I was super picky, I might say a little bit light, but not too bad. I mean, it's clean. Your mic's great. It's clean and present.
Okay. Yeah, I'm running a vocal writer and
oh, good.
I'll just
you know, I bought Vocal Writer and I have it on my vMix, but I've used it, but there have been a couple times it just made me timid because it blew my vMix up like in the middle of a production one time, and I'm like, dang it. So
yeah, I'm gonna run it on a wave server, so hopefully it doesn't.
Yeah. I mean, the concept of it, and I mean, I've had successes with it as well. It's just, you know, once you get bit, it's really hard to, you know, get rid of that memory. but I mean, the tool is fantastic. I mean, between, you know, my ideal is, I mean, there's certain instances where you want to put Vocal Writer on just a single audio channel, right, independently, or you might want to put it, like, if you can't afford some of the other plugins that will recognize the active speaker and duck the others and so forth, then I'll put Vocal Writer on the master the master bus that is outputting everything, and then it's not like I'm ducking everybody, but I'm at least controlling everybody, you know, when they're on their way out to the general public. So, all right. Anybody else? Checks and demos. I gotta figure out this share because I'd really like to. Do you have Companion, Jonathan?
Unfortunately, I don't have it set up at the moment.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to just share with the group, but for some reason I'm not being able to see the screen. Let me see if I changed a share option in Zoom that I don't remember doing, but did. We'll see.
Can I have a question, Jeff?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, yes. Well, I was thinking about redesigning my workflow, but just a few minutes ago, Jonathan pointed me at the target ID, so I should read the F manual, I guess. But I'm wondering what your advice would be. We are running meetings of our city council and broadcasting it on YouTube. Each meeting we have almost the same persons, and they log in with different names. So one time he's called John Smith, and the other time he's calling himself John S. or something like that. But I have on my Stream Deck predefined buttons for every attendee in the meeting. So what I'm doing is writing down those names in Companion, their full names as they are, as the same names which they have logged in with. And therefore, every meeting we check manually if everyone has written down the correct name with the correct spelling, etc., etc. Which gives, of course, a lot of stress in a few minutes when, say, 30 people.
How many
logging in,
people?
etc.
How many people do you have to sort through?
32.
About 30.
Yes.
So I'll tell you what my experience was when I first started using Companion, ZoomOSC, and so forth. I was a name match approach, right? It was like, let's do this by name, and therefore it has to be perfect, including case sensitivity, and then some of the other challenges are at times special characters. Could be different character sets or alphabets, right? And that sometimes can throw some issues into it as well. But a little bit of help from Zoom was they added the pronouns, support for pronouns, and they did that in a separate field, a separate data field. So now if on the back-end settings of your Zoom account, you enable support for pronouns, and then you share with your audience, like say you have, because the tough part is they added the support, but they did it after the habit's already been kind of burned in, which is people rename themselves and they add their pronouns. Like, they won't do it in their account, so it just shows up. They always seem to have to rename themselves every time they go into a meeting. And I don't know if that's more, it's appropriate in this meeting or not in that meeting. I don't know what the driver is. But needless to say, if you let attendees know pronouns are now supported and show them how to once, or maybe a slide or something like that, how to put in their pronouns, it helps us, because pronouns no longer mess up our name matches and the special characters, the slashes and stuff like that. I mean, none of that gets in our way if the pronouns are put into the new pronoun field inside of Zoom. That's just a side note there. But instead of, I'd say this is, I guess this would be a suggestion from me to you, Cone, on relieving your stress a little bit, in the sense that, and then there's kind of more to the story even, that will probably, hopefully will kind of make your day. First is, rather than doing this, human visual match of, that's John Smith, but he came in as John S., and you're either going to tell him to change it, or you're going to change it, or whatever the case may be. So let's say I'm the host, I'm going to change it. Everybody's okay with me getting things updated. They understand why. Well, you got to make sure that you have to take away the right for them to rename themselves then too, right? So that your changes don't get rechanged because you gave
Yeah.
them the ability to rename themselves, right? So lock it down first, then go ahead and make the changes. But the deal is now, I guess part of the deal is defining the reason behind the name match. Is it just a logical link that you're looking for, so a button works when you press it, or is it that you're trying to make their name look like you go onto office hours, they want your first name, last name, dash location, and so forth, right? I mean, they want a specific format. Is it about presentation, or is it really just about linkage? If it's just about linkage, then what I would suggest is use the by username action in companion, but recognize that there's a drop down list there. There's a field that you can type their name in, which is the match, or there's a drop down list that it will show you everybody in the meeting. And so just select John and it will show you the way he came in. And so all you do is select him and it's done. It's a perfect match because it was a populated list from the current inventory of attendees. Does that make sense? I don't know if I can share yet. If I can, I'll show you this. And it still just shows my desktop. Let me see if I can show the browser. Hang on. Browser. Oh, it's there. There it is. Okay. So here. All right, so let's say we build a new button, right? And we we'll make it we can do it by hand, but I guess earlier I really wanted to show off the presets. I don't know. It's not like I'm tied into a ton of vendors, that are companion, integrated and so forth. But man, Liminal has done an incredible job making just a bundle of system variables available. I mean, there's so much. This is all information that you can get live feedback on anytime you type this syntax in, right? I mean, dynamic variables, and it'll hand you back a value. The other part that they've done and continue to grow are the presets, and so you can go to the presets. And you have for gallery audio, spotlight, selection, list index audio, list index spotlight, and so forth. And so let's say you want to set up a spotlight. And so we go, I want to make sure I'm there. Yeah, let's go with the spotlight. If you look at this, I mean, I think impressively, these preset buttons are already populated with our names because we're the ones in the meeting. And they're only presets, like they're dynamically showing. It's like, oh, well, if I want to build a button that shows, that works for Jeff, that's that one. That works for Jonathan, that's that one. That works for Bill. It's like drag and drop, and it's already tied. Now, if I click on this, I can see, well, what is it doing? It's doing a toggle spotlight by gallery position, and this one is 0, 0, this one is 0, 1, this one is 0, 2. So if you look at your gallery view, that will be the positions that these will toggle. But if we were to build a standard button, let's just do a regular button. And I'll say, it's got to type on the right keyboard. Spotlight cone, and I want to force a break right there. So I do a slant in, backslant in, and it forces a line break in the button. Then with that, the action, I think what you're using is you're doing a toggle function, right?
Spotlight, yes.
Yep. And so we, what did I just click? Okay, and that's not what I wanted. So you go spotlight user, right? And you can add to, or you can spotlight, which will clear everything and then just spotlight them. So I'll just say spotlight user. I don't want to spotlight me, but what you're doing, I believe, is you're hand typing and hand matching their names.
Yes.
I say
yes.
stop using that field and just scroll down to the name that you want, because that's perfectly accurate of your name that's in the meeting right now.
Okay, but say over 2 weeks, I've got a meeting again.
Yep.
First, he was logging in as John S.
Yep.
Now he's logging in with the name of John Smith.
Correct.
So
I think I mean, I'm not making everything 100% automatic, because it doesn't ever know what human being's coming in with what name, right?
Yes.
But what you will know is that you can pick your position, pick the button, and you say, who do you want to manage on that button? Who do you want to manage on that button?
Yes.
Now, that might be guided by the way your gallery is looking. It might just be guided by the way you see them in the council, at the council tables, right, from left to right. And so just say, hey, yeah, go ahead.
I can jump in there. What you're saying is definitely correct, and you're right that using that sort of drop-down list will help a lot. One thing I could propose as an alternative, if you wanted to make a controller that was truly sort of permanent and automated,
Yes.
what we found is that using the gallery position as the foundation for the controller helps a lot. So in this example, let's just say you took the, say, 20 buttons on your Stream Deck, and you made buttons for them that what it does is when you push the first button, it spotlights the person in the first gallery position, the second button, the second gallery position, the third, and so on. So you have the buttons only do the gallery positions. And then what you do is you set the label where it says button text. So you see on the right there, the button text right there, what it's doing is it's taking with that $, it's a variable that's taking the username from the gallery position that is currently assigned to that location. So what this means is that when you join a meeting, it will automatically populate the buttons with the usernames based on the gallery position, and it'll apply the spotlight to that position in the gallery.
Yeah, but in that case, they should have their cameras on.
I'll take.
That's correct. They would want their camera on in that context.
Yes. Okay.
I have my page 5 on this Stream Deck is already built to do this, and so this my gallery is here's this button that says Jeff Widgren. I never typed it. I'll never type it. If Jonathan's the first one in the meeting next time, it'll be Jonathan's name. Or if Cohn's the first one in, it'll be Cohn's name. And so whoever lands in this position, 0, 0, the index position 0, 0, whoever shows up in that position, the dynamic part is the $, it will populate it with their username. And that's Jonathan's whole point, is you can have this whole page built. This will be position 1, position 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 15, 20. So the first 20 positions of your gallery, it'll automatically populate. And as a matter of fact, if I were to, I don't have the right screen up right now because I'm sharing, but if I had the gallery in front of me, and you know how you can click and drag and adjust people's videos and swap them around and so forth, if I were to readjust my gallery and move me to the second position, my Stream Deck on this template will automatically update as well, and it will in this case it'll swap me with Jonathan is labeled there.
What would you think? I've submitted a feature request this afternoon. What would you think of the possibility to just enter a part of the name? So in this case, in the field user identifier, we would type Smith instead of John Smith. And the program is looking for a name which contains Smith. which would make it easier to attach an attendee to the same button every meeting he is visiting.
And you know, I would say, and obviously my intent is never to, you know, sound crass or offensive or anything like that, but I would say that's a very fuzzy wish, because it's when you're doing matching, really the only time, and I come from a programmatic background, it's where I founded my career, is fuzzy matching really is commonly only acceptable and very, very useful in a search, not an actual literal link. And to have a fuzzy match represent a bit of a permanent link, you end up with circumstances down the road that you didn't think about during the day of implementation, but now you're dealing with the consequences weeks or months later, going, why is it doing this? And commonly it's because of the logic that was a little too loose originally. And so I would take your request and say, if you had a very large meeting and you had to like create linkages off of exact name matches, maybe there's a dialogue that lets you do that fuzzy search to narrow 200 people down to the 3 Smiths, and then you can select the correct Smith and do that hard link, if you will. But being fuzzy, like, you know, like doing it on a fuzzy Smith, not knowing whether he'll put his first name or his last name, he may not even come in with that. He might be on a friend's or mother-in-law's computer or something next time, and it gets blown right out the window because of his behavior that you could have never predicted, and it had nothing to do with Smith or any letters within it, you know?
Okay.
Yeah.
Understand. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but yeah, the gallery, you know, that's this page, like when this meeting ends, man, let's see if I can get by with blowing this up a little bit. Yeah, there we go. When this meeting is over, those 5 populated buttons with our names on them will disappear, and they'll all be buttons with dashes. And the very next meeting I go into, those buttons will get populated with those people in those positions. And this happens to be a page where I can select. I can say, Jeff, Jonathan, Cone, oops. I don't know that that's actually working. Hang on, let me get on the same page on my actual Stream Deck. So Jeff, yeah, they are kind of selected. I might have messed with this program because it's not selecting the way it's supposed to select. But it's meant to select, execute, spotlight, and then select, and execute, whether it's in spotlight or whatnot. That's Jeremy. And so there's something I've messed up on this particular page. but it's really meant to be a page full of opportunity that dynamically populates itself based on the current meeting. So you don't even have to program or reprogram, if you will. So this one is gallery position, and it's it's toggle spotlight based on gallery index. So if I shift click Jeff, you can see I just got spotlighted. If I shift click Jonathan, now we've got 3 spotlights. If I click Jonathan again, he should go away. Take myself off. I think I missed Jonathan. There we go. And so Jeremy remains spotlighted, and I'll take him away, and now it should be gallery, I believe. But anyways, it's meant to have that, you know, built-in functionality, but dynamic population. Now, we've had more conversations, Ed, Willick and I, and Andy and Benjamin in the past. And so that's all good if it's a small enough, manageable enough numbers of people, you know. And I should clean up these spotlights real quick so that the stream looks better. That should be, see if that switches to me or not. Anyways, so that, where was I going? Oh, if you have a big meeting, and let's just say, you've got 200, 300, 400, 500 people in a meeting, compared to the number of buttons you have, and actually the number of people in that meeting I really care about, as far as me being, the technical moderator, I only really have to manage, let's say, maybe 8 to 10 people who will speak throughout the program. And so I really don't have I don't have concerns like, with video switching and so forth with anybody else. So how do I quickly find those, let's say 10 folks out of a, 300 person meeting and get those 10 people on buttons that are usable. And so that becomes, the next challenge is how do I show up as, hired technical help into a meeting I know next to nothing about, other than they've given me 10 names of people, and those are the people you're going to have to spotlight, throughout the 10 let's say 2-hour program. And so we had conversations about that, and so it's natural behavior, in this dynamic sense, dynamically populating gallery, placed names and so forth. The assumption is, let's go here for just a quick assumption, or plan accordingly, because you'll find that it's really, really helpful, is to at least have a small rehearsal, or at least an early tech check-in, right? So ask those 10 people to show up 30 minutes before the meeting goes live or event goes live, primarily so you can get those 10 people to all fit on your stream deck for the sake of, description. And then this is what's coming. I think it's going to make the 405. Do you know, Jonathan, or not? Is the favorites. Is now I've got the 10 people that I can go click, 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 all 10 of them, and say make favorites. Now it's captured those 10, and I can have another page over here sitting to recognize, is there a list of favorites? And they instantly get populated the moment I start assigning them to favorites. Now I don't care how big that meeting gets, once we open up the waiting room, I've got my favorites defined, and those are my switcher buttons for the night. And they were derived from the known people. They were derived from the names, the way they spelled them when they showed up. All I had to do is pluck them out of my buttons on my Stream Deck, define them as favorites, and now that's my panel that I'm going to switch from for the night for spotlights and so forth. Does that make sense? That I know is... Yes. I know it's I know it's coming, and I'm pretty sure it's in this next release. Andy may be cringing while maybe he's listening. I don't know whether he's listening on YouTube or not, but it may be in this next release, because we talked about it actually quite a while ago, and he knew exactly what logic it was going to take and the whole bit. So it's exciting, because here's the breakdown is you have this gallery position, and you have their username. Let's do this based on this username match, right? Or do this based on their gallery position. So instead of do this to cone, which is spotlight cone, spotlight this position and whoever's in that position that happens to be cone, okay? So spotlight this gallery position, or spotlight this target ID, which also, there's a target ID that's going to belong to you, cone, and or spotlight the Zoom ID that belongs to cone. And you're like, well, goodness sakes, what are all these identifiers? There's like, at least a minimum of 4 ways to identify, and there's a list index, and there's multiple ways to reference an individual that you want to, let's just say, keep it simple and say spotlight.
I can touch on that real quick.
Yeah.
I would recommend that the two to use would be either the gallery index or the list index. And I believe, I'll have to confirm this, but I believe the list index would allow you to get the usernames of those who don't have their video turned on, and you'd be able to work with that. We tend to prefer using the gallery index, or the gallery position is even better, because then you can sort of lay out your panel so that if somebody's in the third row and second from the left, you could actually have their button in that same corresponding location, which can intuitively make it easy to sort of find people when you have a large meeting. But the list index would be an alternative way to do it if you just wanted to. And I believe the list it's derived from the order that they join the meeting. It's a very so. It's only helpful in certain contexts, but those would be the two that I'd recommend using. And I think what Jeff is saying is exactly right, that the sort of mentality behind it is that instead of calling people out by username specifically, create a controller that's calling out different positions, different gallery indexes, different sort of general locations, and then those will be auto-populated using the companion that we have.
Yeah, but I mean, there are in fact use cases, for. Well, I saw, like, when I was talking to Andy, it's like, why in the world? Like, Zoom ID is created by Zoom. Zoom is the one who produces that number that identifies you when you're in a session. Target ID is literally created by ZoomOSC. That program, they literally thought it up. They realize there's a benefit to it, and therefore they also create a target ID. Why would they do that? If there's already a Zoom ID, why would they do that? If you get disconnected, if somebody gets disconnected from a Zoom meeting and quickly log back in, no fault of their own, they will come in as a different Zoom ID. But if you have been referencing them with a method that relies on a target ID, they will come back in, and the buttons that spotlight them, mute them, and so forth by target ID will continue to work even when they log back in, because the target ID stays consistent. Now, it's super important to understand, how does it stay consistent? And it stays consistent based on their name matching the name you're looking for, right? So Jeff Widgren has to come back in as Jeff Widgren in order to retain the same target ID he had 60 seconds ago. That's why it can survive. If I joined the meeting, there's just caveat after caveat and kind of all the different approaches. But if I got disconnected, if I joined the meeting initially and I came in as Jeff W., I was asked by, let's say, the meeting moderator to provide my first name and full last name. And so I renamed myself to Jeff Widgren instead of Jeff W. And then I got disconnected, which then I come back in and it defaults to my profile spelling, Jeff W. Now my target ID won't until I rename myself to exactly the same spelling as before. See, it's just critical to understand, like, what's the dependencies of target ID's success, and it's a name match. Like, if I had a button that spotlighted Jonathan right now by target ID, and he literally went to rename himself right now, he will break my button by renaming himself. To know that that's the dependency for the linkage and success of the execution of your buttons is to know, well, a target ID can survive reconnects in most cases, with the exception of that renaming thing that I just explained. But it can't survive a name change. And so you go, well, then that means me, the moderator, I'm going to go to the security button of the Zoom meeting, and I'm not going to enable participants to rename themselves. Because once they're matched, they're matched. I want them to stay matched, and I don't want them to be able to change things during the meeting. And it happens all the time. It only takes one to really mess things up, right? And And so, you have to know that you're going into a meeting or a job that will allow you to lock down renaming. And you say, well, I can't, or I can. Or the happy medium, show up early, ask everybody, say, hey, everybody's got 5 minutes to update your name, because after that we're going to lock it down because we have to for the technical team, and then you lock it down, and then you do your thing technically, and then away you go. You're on the show, and you know that none of the names are going to change. They're locked down, and all your switching's working. And so it's just to understand. That's why I say just understand the linkages and why the different methods are there, why they exist. Because the list index, you're always going to get a completely populated return of everybody in the meeting, but I don't think you're ever going to get a partial return. So I don't want 500 people. I want those 10 people that I have to switch tonight for the event. You know what I'm saying? And so, I think there's just so many different use cases. And I think that's what's great about it. You go, oh, can't it just do something? And it's like, no, really. I mean, it's catering to all the different kinds of meetings, all the different types of events, and giving us the flexibility. And once we understand, where the benefits and kind of weaknesses are of each approach, then we align that with our meeting and see which one works best. And the other thing is, when you're using Companion, you have 99 pages of programmable buttons. You can have one that's purely set up for dynamic gallery position, one purely set up for dynamic target IDs. They can all be dynamically populated in different methods. And when you join a meeting, they all get populated by the names. And depending on what kind of meeting you're in, really will drive which pages you're going to actually run with on that particular show. David?
Yeah, just a quick question. Most of the events we do at work are webinars, and we'll usually set them up with the practice session. So you have a finite list of panelists that you're sending out and aware of. Can you not use that information to build a virtual table or database of things to import in for the event itself?
If you know the list of those you have to be concerned with as far as kind of the switching and so forth, that's the target. I think that's the target ID approach, and that is you can have a text. It's literally just a text file that you build in Notepad, and you just put name, return, name, return, name, return, and you have these names from top to bottom, and that's position 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and so that's their indexed position. Although the line numbers aren't visible, that is what they're considered, and you can do exactly that. So now you can load. There's a command, a ZoomOSC command to load, and so you can name that file properly and load it into the memory of ZoomOSC. So now that's the 10 names it's looking for, the name matches, right? Once it finds those names, the buttons out there on your Stream Deck are really looking for those particular target IDs, and once they show up, poof, their name shows up, their name shows up, and they're present. And so I did a graduation once that was based off this known list of graduates, and my page was all built for that weighting, and it went green, 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 and the buttons that turned green means they showed up and they matched, had nothing to do. The ones that didn't light up, those were your close hits, and you had to get their name to match. You can either change it in Zoom, or I can change it on that Notepad file, that target list. I can update my side to match what they came in as, reload it, and now their button goes green too. So I knew they were present. So absolutely, you can have that known list of folks, no matter what size the audience is.
I'm gonna have to get going right now, but it's been great talking to you guys, answering questions and demonstrating things.
Do we have an option, Jonathan? We don't want to let you go.
Of course, you got to pick up someone from the airport. Not Andy,
yeah, gotcha. I wouldn't want to be that guy, so we'll let you go.
Absolutely.
But as always, thanks for coming and spending time sharing knowledge with us. Certainly appreciate
Nope,
that.
no problem. And I can just touch on a few things that are sort of on the way. So we've got a new update for ZoomISO in the next couple of weeks. We've got a new update for ZoomOSC, hopefully within a week or so. We've completed the major development for it. We're just doing testing, evaluation, documentation, those kind of things. And then we've got tutorials that are being posted for ZoomISO. And we've got a few, small case studies to keep an eye out for. The office hours deployment using STI is a really cool thing to sort of keep track of. And the as we build with all of our software, we use OSC as a very foundational input and output system. And so even ZoomISO can really tie into that ecosystem. And so for us, what's exciting is that once you create a scalable ingest system, a contribution system, then you can start doing automations and automatic lower thirds and all these other complicated things built upon that. So a lot of exciting stuff to come. We'll definitely share more information about these in coming sessions.
Yeah, I saw Jonas's. I need to get on the phone with him or a Zoom with him and see. But I saw active speaker popped out the video, put up their name. Popped out the video, put up their name. Had nothing to do with him doing anything other than using the code that he wrote. It's like fascinating. So,
all right,
yeah,
well, take care,
good
everyone.
stuff. Take care, Jonathan. Thanks again. Jeremy, you there with ZoomISO? Are you just doing ISO and are you having any success? And or do you need some more privileges to get anything else done? Oh, ZoomISO, there it is. vMix, there it is. A little bit of delay, not too bad actually.
So Jeff, I would have a question. Andre here.
Yep.
So if you have a meeting in a meeting, let's say you have a meeting for your panelists, 10 people, set them up in a meeting and bring them in another meeting with all the participants. You have to do a mix minus, that's clear, so that the people from the one meeting will hear the people from the other meeting, but not themselves. Did you do this, and how is it with a delay? So when the panelists speak, pardon?
I think we just got some accidental ingestion.
Okay, so when you have the panelists saying something, going through the sound mixer and the machines, going then to the participants meeting, is there a significant delay, or is it something that you can deal with without a problem?
No. If you here's the deal. If you put two pictures of me up in this Zoom meeting right now, you can obviously see the delay. Why do you see the delay? Because you have something to compare it to, and but if you don't have something to compare it to, you'll never know it's a delay. It's like broadcast television. We think it's live, but it ain't live. It could be significant delayed. So, and the thing is, to be the one that actually knows how many frames or milliseconds there is in actual delay, it's really minimal, to pull either ISO or muxed audio, depending on the product that you're using, whether it's Zoom NDI, which does do ISO audio right now.
No, it would be ZoomOSC.
Zoom Room NDI does isolated audio. ZoomISO does muxed audio only right now, and we'll await that improvement over time. So if we stick with ZoomISO, we're pulling naturally we get the video out with a ZoomISO feed. We can also just pull a single feed of audio, muxed audio. So there has to be some rules or breakout rooms that separate kind of green room to on stage room, if you will, because we potentially can hear anybody in the same room, right? But we pull that. But the delay from doing that and injecting it into the general session meeting is insignificant as a single source. And then you just make sure that you keep them mix minus
That's clear.
on the return is all. So Yeah, no, I don't think the delay is not a problem on that thing. When you don't have a comparator, the delay is not a big deal. There's not such a big gap that like, you know, we've all seen newscasters go, so what's going on out there? When's the sandstorm going to stop? You know, and there's that big gap because of, you know, like satellite delayed transmission. And I mean, it's literally a
Yes.
massive delay, right? So, and there's nothing they can do to fix, I mean, there's nothing that at that moment, anyways, they can do to fix that. We are not dealing with those kinds of delays. And so it works just fine. Happens a lot. I mean, as far as from meeting to meeting to meeting, it happens a lot of this cross connect and cross feeds and mixed minuses and so forth.
Okay, thanks.
You bet. Jeremy, so is this the first time or a continuation of you kind of messing with it? Like, is this the first time you fired it up and you've already got it up in a 4-up in vMix? I mean, was it that simple, or have you had some practice before you got here today?
Sorry, I was on the wrong screen there. This is the first time I've actually sent it over NDI. I tested with an SDI with a Blackmagic monitor, Ultra Studio monitor. But this is the first time going really from one computer to the next. I've had one output on the last test, so this will be the first time I've done multiple outputs across a network or anything.
Very cool. So pretty straightforward at the end of the day. Good stuff. What else anybody got?
As well. I appreciate all
Are you?
this.
Yeah, I think we're getting to that point where we'll wrap up and call it a day. And you know, challenge you to, you know, bust out that Stream Deck and or iPad and use Companion on the screen instead. The iPad making it a touch device, and the emulators in Companion make that super easy to use on an iPad instead of even having to buy a Stream Deck or have a Stream Deck. But try something, you know, and even if that something is coming in with that second device next week, you know, and come into the kitchen with it. And I mean, I have absolutely zero issue. I'd actually be pretty thrilled if we came in to this and it's just 100% workshop, you know, and because when ZoomOSC really kind of first came out and had a lot of excitement about it, we sat in the it was the Zoom Test Kitchen then. It wasn't the OSC Test Kitchen, but with that, I got to say goodbye to that person. Just sat here and worked and talked and tried to type command, because that was when it was all OSC command language, you know, and just manually working through it and talking it out and so forth. So I have no problem with it becoming just that, because that's just real hands-on progress. And,
so my goal then next week will, if you'll let me, is to log in with my Stream Deck and switch part of the show.
Absolutely. Yep. Tell me what machine it is, and we'll give you, in order to do the OSC stuff, you have to be co-host. I'll make you co-host, and can mess around with that and the whole bit. So no, that'd be fantastic. And then you know, being where we are, then, you know, I mean, we'll either help you build that out so you can switch it, or if you've came in that ready, then just share what you built and
I'll tell you what, I'll share what I build, and then you can critique it and tell me how to do it better.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm that expert, but little by little, every you know, really every week, every event pushes me a little bit further. But there's a ton of commands. I mean, the library has gotten so large and so capable and so forth. I haven't touched but a fraction of it, but it's, you know, when you need it, it's probably there, and then you go figure it out and make it happen. And there's more presets all the time to where we're not even having to write the syntax any longer. You know, these buttons are all so many of them are built for us, and that list is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Have you found the latest build of Companion is stable? The beta build?
I'm running it right now. I mean, it's at least been stable in the sense over the last 2 hours of this meeting, because I literally installed it at the beginning of this meeting.
Okay.
And so I'm on the latest beta build, and I didn't show enough to have to cover what I was showing with a liability statement, but I am running the latest unreleased, version of the ZoomOSC as well. But it's like to build 2010 or something like that. But it's not released yet. But at the same time, if anything were to have gone wrong or whatnot, but I am
just
running on
recently built a companion Pi, and I think that's running the beta stuff, and it's pretty solid.
Well, and the beta builds, I'll tell you, it's nice and exciting because they've really upgraded Companion quite a bit, visually and the layout, and I think they put one new emulator on there and so forth. So what I'm going to try to do is take this like this latest build. I've been doing it every once in a while. This is my 2015 MacBook Pro. I think it's a 2017 13-inch MacBook Pro, and that was the machine that Companion, over time with big meetings, would just go crazy on the CPU and finally poop out. And it was Companion, but I want to see kind of when or if we've gotten past that threshold to where it would even run well on that Mac. I would love it to be able to run well on that Mac because it's a little newer and a little more oomph, but it's doing good on this one too. So, but yeah, I'd be okay going with this at the moment. I mean, I would probably go to a released production version if I had to go do a big job, but I may, on smaller meetings, I'd be, and you can run them side by side. Talk about your redundant architecture you're talking about earlier, David. OSC A could be the released build, and OSC B could be, the late, or vice versa. Your primary could be the latest beta build, and your backup could be the production build, just in case it kicks your butt, right? But they're both there, and at least, if you had to, for some reason, go to your backup OSC machine, it would be the production release version, and then you have like minimal loss. If you were taking advantage of some features that only existed on the beta build, that's the only thing you end up losing by going to your backup to the production release. Is you gain the stability, which the beta just lost its reliability on, but you just lost just a couple of new features, which is maybe the driving reason you had both versions there. So much to think about.
Well, Jeff, thank you very much. This was a good session for me. I appreciate your
likewise.
This.
Well, the more we do it, the more we understand, and I didn't used to have a darn thing to say in this meeting, and I find myself having a little more to say each time, and part of it I probably talk too much, but I try to test myself as far as how much do I really understand this, and so it's solid. Always love getting together with you guys. Certainly, thank you for that. We'll be here again tomorrow afternoon for everybody else watching and whatnot for the Zoom Test Kitchen. We'll focus on Zoom itself. I'm trying to gain some access to the new Zoom Events platform. I don't think that's going to happen by tomorrow necessarily, but I'm trying to get a good solid walkthrough by somebody at Zoom and then have them give me some temporary access so that I can do a real solid overview to people in the Zoom Test Kitchen as well. So I can squash all those bad attitudes You know, there's people people who have never seen it, which I've never seen it, right? It's like we've never seen it, but yet we have a bunch of poo-pooing to do on it. It's like, what? Like, where is that coming from? Well, it's probably just going to be this. It's like, give me a break. I mean, I'm confident they've spent a bucket loads of money on development to improve it where, you know, at least where it initially needs to be improved, and continue to grow it like every software solution. So
all I know is that they were pushing it with stockholders as a driver for revenue growth. So
yeah,
that tells
well,
you
and
that they're going to invest in it.
it's revenue growth. I mean, because I just saw a headline yesterday that the CEO in an interview said that they are now a platform company, and I'm like, yeah, they've made a shift, you know, and they've made a shift by, you know, investing in building kind of an initial release of a platform, right? Their platform, and there's a lot to be had out there. I mean, they've got the foundation, which I would say, you know, satisfies to a great degree the big education space, right? And then you know, the platform is really into the marketing and event side of corporate you know, organizations, right? And so because their foundation of meetings, their meetings are covered, meeting requirements are covered as well. But now to be able to have a, you know, if you will, a container that wraps that core, that has a whole list of the entire session and all the links to all the sessions, and those are separate meetings. I mean, now we don't have to build, you know, that separate website to drive people through and password protect it and put a paywall on it and all those things, you know. So I'm excited to see, you know, what it has become. So anyways, I will either see you tomorrow or I'll see you next week.
Agreed. Thanks again.
Thanks, guys.